Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guests. I got to tell you something, people. This week, I've been battling COVID, but luckily, this is my fourth interview this week, so it's kept my mind off COVID, and my wife, Joanne, got it, and we have a one-bedroom condo, so I've been sleeping on the couch, so I've been ornery, but when I talk to talented individuals, it makes me happy, and that's my guest today. He's one of those actors. He's one of those actors that when you see him, you know it's going to be a good scene. I mean, there's some actors you see and you go, but this guy, he always does well. And he's just working on a Hallmark movie, and he played a jerk in We Work. Well, sort of. You were sort of a jerk, a scumbag.
I think a sympathetic jerk.
And my guest is Peter Jacobson. How you doing, Peter?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
How are you? I'm sorry you're doing, you've been having a hard week. I'm sorry. Is this the closet you're in?
This is what I record my show in.
Oh, okay.
It's funny. I went to the Blondie concert on Saturday, and I got home Sunday, and I was lucky. One of my guests was in the Sex Pistols, Glenn Matlock, and he's playing bass, so he comped me these great seats. So I'm great. I go with my buddy. I get home Sunday. I wake up, and I knew I had it. And I don't know, because I'm vaxxed and all that stuff. And I sat there and I said, I'm going to start self-quarantining. Tuesday, I test again. I'm positive. My wife is negative. Tuesday night, she gets it. So it happens.
That's the life we got right now, right?
How has it affected you on set? Because actors, it's changed the whole dynamic.
Yeah, it was very well. First, it affected everything went away. I mean, I guess it's now been a couple of years at least, and that was the big change. Was that there was nothing. I mean, I was lined up to do a play in New York, and that I had done in L.A., and then I was also supposed to do a few episodes of Fear the Walking Dead. And everything had just shut down. It was like suddenly, the work that you were hoping for and relying on was just gone. And that was true in most businesses. But then as we ramped back up, it was amazing just how rigorous and strict the SAG rules were on being on set. Different sections where you're allowed to be, not be, everybody's masked. They changed some of the writing, too. I was doing a scene for Fear the Walking Dead, and I was in one scene, and then the next scene, I should have been in the next scene. It made all the sense because my character wouldn't have just disappeared. He was supposed to be there. And I wasn't upset. I was like, okay, maybe somebody made a mistake. So I said to the director, aren't I kind of supposed to be here? It makes sense. And she was like, well, you are, but we're not allowed to have more than a certain number of actors anymore in one place. So you're out. And I was like, well, okay. I mean, I understand the health trumps art, so it made no sense that I was not in the scene. But and now, interestingly, so it's been a couple of years of very, one of the beautiful, great things I love about what I do is just the camaraderie and the, so many interesting, creative people, and it's new people all the time, and I just love the chit chat, the kibitzing that goes on in my work, and you're not allowed to. You have not been allowed to do that for a couple of years. It's everybody's masked and separate, and it really is a very different energy. You don't recognize people. It's hard to know what people really look like, and you're working with them, and then suddenly you'll see them with a mask down. And you're like, oh, that's the camera operator, but I didn't know that. This thing I'm working on now, we're shooting in Utah, and it seems to be that there's a little bit less masking going on, which is suddenly I was like, oh, wow, with people again. And that's nice. I think it'll go up and down as we sort of work our way out of this. Eventually, hopefully, light at the end of the tunnel, we'll all be unmasked and chit-chatting again.
It hurts crafty. It hurts crafty because, I've been on sets before where you just go
really hurts
and you would take a bunch of those nature bars, those nature bars, and put them in your bag. Now I heard you have to actually go up and say, yeah, can I have one of them? And you just can't taste them.
It's like being at like a little deli now. They're like, there's somebody there, and everybody's got their hazmat suits and all the food there. Yeah, I'd like a Rolo and although again, loosening up. People, again, we're not so worried about the touch as we were right away. I mean, the first time I went back to set, there were a huge room. Normally people would be sitting together eating lunch, and everybody's sitting individually at these tables about 6 feet apart. And I was like, wow, this is so sad. The food is not as accessible. It's not as good. These are the things that matter. But you were right to notice it.
Now, you've been working for a long time. Are you at the point of your career, and I hear so many actors are in so many different points of their careers, and they've been working for a long time, they still have to audition. Do you still, now for you, when you audition, do you like the room or the self-tape?
Well, I don't have any choice now. This is a big conversation among actors now is, we're all forced to self-tape. Now, the good part about that is, well, to answer your question, yes, I do still audition. Sometimes, although it goes back and forth. I mean, I am not in a place where I'm like, I won't audition. Depends on the project. I'll audition for anything that I love if they want me to audition. That's what we do as actors. It's part of you want to show them that what you got. It's great if you just get an offer, and that sort of happens. I would say half the time I get offers, and the other half of the time I'm auditioning. The advantage to the self-tape is that you have all the time in the world to be as neurotic as you want and perfectionist as you want, and you get the piece that you want. You get that tape. And it's, I can take all the time I need. I'm not nervous about, am I getting it right? I got to nail it now. I really create a piece. But you send it out into the stratosphere now that is just swamped. Everybody's got a self-tape, and there's just not that same sense of confidence that my tape is going to get looked at. There's also what you lose is that really the energy in the room that I love and grew up in this business, I think, benefiting from is, you're meeting a director, you're meeting a casting director or producer, and it's more than just the part. They're seeing whether or not you're a person they want to spend time with for the next few months. And, you get to know somebody's sense of humor and who they are outside the part. And I think that's invaluable energy and information, and it has been always helpful for me, I think, in getting cast. And that's been a struggle, and that I don't get that opportunity now. And I don't know that we're going to go back to it. There's the overhead for casting directors, and the amount of work bringing actors in, it's pretty steep, but it's unfair, I think, for the actors now. We have to pay for our own lighting, pay for our camera equipment, use your phones, but if you want to have really good production value, you've got to pay for that for that equipment, and it's a real struggle. And I'm curious to see how we sort of flow out of this.
Well, I know you've done stage, so I would think that would really help you in the room compared to someone who didn't. Because So saying that, when you self-tape, you can say this. Do you sometimes get into your own head too much? Because when you're doing stage, you got to deliver it right there. But when you can go back and you go, oh shit, that doesn't look right. Have you been doing that at all?
Oh my God, I'm the worst. I'll do 75 takes if I don't think it's right. Now, when you're on a set and you're actually moving, that's the fun part of. I've grown to appreciate that, having come from the theater, that you get to redo in the moment. The downside is that you get it ultimately when you do it, you don't get the chance to do it again. But when you're filming something and you make a mistake, you get a shot at it again. But I also think it's important to not be too precious about your work when you've got a crew of 200 people who are there trying to get to the end of the day and there's money involved. You gotta, I can't stop and go, no, let me have that little moment again. Sometimes it's important to say, wait a minute, I can do that better. When it's just me and my audition, I'll read I'll read all day just to get it right, because I can. And I'm picky.
How'd you get into acting? Did you want to be an actor as a young kid? I know you went to Brown, you went to Juilliard, but you're a guy from Chicago. Where did you start?
I started just doing plays in school, and just always loved it. And I thought, people would say, "Oh, you're really good. You have a great energy about," and so that kind of built on itself. And then by the time I was in high school, I was definitely part of the theater scene, although I loved, I was playing soccer too. And, it wasn't, when I was a teenager, I wasn't like, I'm going to do this, but it was definitely a big part of my life. My father was a TV anchorman in Chicago, and I used to love going with him to the newsroom, and that was, in ways, it really is a live performance. And I would sit with him while he would get made up, into makeup every night, and I watched his sort of ability to sort of, think on his feet in front of cameras and all the lights. And so it's not acting, but there was a drama element to it that was really appealing to me. And I remember just loving being there around the lights. Now, I didn't get into film and TV until well after I'd started in the theater, but I think somewhere as a kid, that kind of juiced me a bit. But mostly it was just, high school plays and loving it, and then I went to college and just kept going and doing more and more, and I had success at it. I mean, I felt like I was able to get good parts and good shows, and the bottom line is I just loved it. And then auditioned for Juilliard after college and got in. So I wasn't going to turn that down. 4 years of training in New York.
How hard were the auditions for Juilliard? Were they? I mean, it's one of those things. You hear Juilliard. I mean, and that's one of those things. It's like if you're a musician, you hear Berkeley.
Right.
But whenever you read Juilliard, you go, "This person has chops." I mean, it's just a given. But what was it like the audition process?
Well, it's it's a stressful building. I mean, I auditioned in New York. They audition around the country, so people don't have to fly in. They go to Chicago and L.A. But I think the most intense ones were in New York. And this is a while ago, but it's sort of a scary building. It's not a lot of windows, and the hallways are kind of dark. And you show up, and you're in a studio with about 50 other crazy wannabe actors. We're all auditioning for Juilliard, so there's a tension that is really high. I remember being really stressed at first, but then for some reason when I walked into my little section, I just had this moment. I walked in the door and I was like, "This feels right." I'm relaxed. I kind of tuned out the stress and I hit it right out of the gate. And then they have callbacks later in the day. And I was the only one that got called back for the afternoon session. So I'd done something right. And then you do it in the big theater, the drama theater, and then the whole faculty is there. And that is really, really intimidating and scary. And they asked me to sing a song, which I wasn't necessarily ready for. It was just one of those weird days. It was like I was not, there's a lot of time in my career when you walk in a room and the stress and anxiety wins and the nerves win out. This was one, maybe I was just young and stupid, but I was just like, I want this, and I was just flowing. And something, that anxiety just was gone. I wish I could just grab that now whenever I want.
I want to talk more about Juilliard, but give me an example of when you went into a room and you were stressed and anxiety-ridden. I mean, so a one that you really remember, or that you look back and go, I screwed up,
I did this movie, 61, baseball movie, Billy Crystal directed. A wonderful movie for HBO. I was just like, I'm right for this part. It's a reporter, obnoxious guy in the 60s. I just knew I was right for this role. And I walked in, and I'm a huge fan of Billy Crystal's, and I was just so nervous. Oh, I think I had done a tape before, and he had liked the tape, so I knew he thought I was I was there because I was one of the few people who he was considering. But I was meeting him, and he's very engaging and very funny, and I just couldn't shake the nerves. I was like, it's Billy Crystal, and I want this, and I think he wants me, and you get that in your head, and then you're not able to really do what you're there to do, which is to let go and be the character. I couldn't let go. I was like, that's Billy Crystal, and he's here, and I could tell that he wasn't frustrated, but I wasn't doing what I think he wanted me to do. So he kept saying, no, go again. Yeah, I know you can get it. And he was just adorable and sweet, but everything in my head was, you're blowing it. And I walked out of the room just miserable. I was like, ugh, and I got it. So who knows?
Now, when you get out of Juilliard, did Juilliard prepare you to start getting into the acting world? Because I heard sometimes they really don't. They prepare you how to act, but they don't give you the business acumen that you need.
Absolutely zero. I think they've changed. I mean, I got out a while ago. I think they've over the ensuing decades, they've wizened up and realized that, look, we're training people to be actors. We better train them, give them some help in how to get the damn job, because that's the hardest part. No, it was a very intense theater training. It wasn't even so much that I didn't get training in auditioning in the business side. You got no camera training. So, my first real job, paying job, was the Shakespeare in the Park, which is, a comedy of errors. It's 2,000 people a night. I can barely, keep my voice alive for the run, and it's broad, and that's what you learned. You learned how to play, and I couldn't get I would go in for commercials and TV shows, and I think I just, I was out here because my theater training had me, all out here, and nobody ever told me, you're going to have to bring it down about 99% for the camera. And I had to learn that myself. And certainly there was no real focus on, how do you build a career? How do you build how do you make money? How do you present yourself? It was just all about the acting. So, I teach myself. But at the same time, I learned how to direct myself, which was great because I've had some great directors and I've had some directors that shouldn't be directors. And at the bottom line is that oftentimes you just don't get the attention that you do in the theater because there's just too much else to worry about. And so I know how to ask the right questions about my character and to initiate those conversations with my fellow actors. And I learned that at school.
Now, I ask actors a lot who have stage background, and they always seem to have a similar story. When you first got on a set with the camera, a lot of times they weren't sure how to react to that, like you said earlier. But then you have a camera, so you don't really know you're used to playing. What was your first gig that you remember and you went, holy crap, I know I have the talent because they cast me, but I'm not sure I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, interestingly, I think 61 was the same problem, the same event of sort of anxiety, and I guess it was early in my TV and film learning, and this actor who was my partner in the movie, my journalist, reporter partner was Richard Mazer, who was a wonderful character actor, and he'd been around the band, and he kind of took me under his arm and was like, you're going to want to make sure that you look this way when the camera's here, and make sure that when the coverage is on you, that you're more focused, and you should be focused all the time. But there were certain tricks that he taught me that I realized that without him, I would have maybe not wound up in the film as much as I did. But the anxiety of how to do it in front of a camera you just have to learn that over time, and probably being on House. Was because that was a 5-year gig, and every day, jobs come, they're so few and far between. But when you get lucky enough to be on something every day for years, like anything, you just learn it, gets in your body, and you're just doing it all the time. So there were tricks that I began to learn. I just mostly learned how to relax and make the camera my friend, as opposed to that terrifying lens that could ruin me.
Now, earlier in your career, when you're starting to get parts in different parts, were you doing any commercials too, or what were you?
Oh yeah, I started out doing. Before I started getting real parts on TV shows, I had about a 5-year span when probably about a few years after I got out of Juilliard. So somewhere in the mid '90s, I kind of hit a commercial wave where suddenly I was doing like 3 or 4 commercials a year, and that was back in the day when commercials paid well. And at one point I was doing, I remember 9X. That was before the big breakup. 9X was the old telecommunications company in New York, I guess. I don't know. And I had a FedEx commercial at the same time. And I remember walking down the street, and some guy came up to me and he goes, "You're the 9X guy." And then somebody else came back, was walking by, and goes, "No, that's the FedEx guy." So, and I did like McDonald's and Arby's, and I worked with some really great commercial directors. There were some, really fun ones. I did a Diet Pepsi commercial or a Pepsi ad with this great famous commercial director who was a big scary guy. It was a wonderful commercial. They aired it during the Oscars, and commercials could be fun. Some of them a lot of physical comedy.
Well, how do you stay focused on your acting? Because like you said, commercials were pretty lucrative back then. So when it's there, there's a difference of being a starving actor than a actor who's says he's starving, but he has 3 or 4 nationals, so he's doing okay. How do you keep her? And you start making some money, and then you think, well, first you think it's going to go on forever. This is just going to keep going because we're young and we're stupid. Yep. But then you sit there and you probably, did you sit there and go, did it make you work as hard because you had a cushion?
I've never had trouble working hard or being focus on getting the next job. Sort of sitting back and relaxing is not something that I know how to do. I don't think that's necessarily because such a great work ethic. It's either good. It's probably half work ethic and half just total stress machine. And no matter what, I'm going to be an anxious mess. So there are two ways of looking at it. But yeah, I don't think that I ever, even when that was probably the first time I started making good money. Because when I had a Sprint commercial that I was in 5 or 6 spots, and those things just pay residuals, and that was the first time that I started making money that I could be able to maybe relax a bit. But it never occurred to me. I just have always been, what's next? I do have a sense that it won't last. It doesn't last. Maybe that's just part of my, Jewish upbringing that neurotic and, oh no, what's around the corner that's going to ruin everything. I don't know. It's just who I am. I've never been somebody who could sit back and say, yeah, I'm good in it.
Well, as you're working through the TV early on, as you said, it's gig to gig. Were you someone who was lucky during pilot season, or someone who was unlucky during pilot season?
Are you asking, was I somebody who was unlucky?
Lucky or unlucky? Were you out getting pilots, or what happened?
Well, this back in the day, whatever that means now, 90s, 2000s, I would go out to L.A. for, January, February, March, which was the pilot season. There was there was hardly cable, much less now there's no pilot season. It's just endless TV auditions. The network still does it their way, but there's just so much more. But back then it was 3 months that were, you would audition for all the network, for whatever network pilots that you can get out for, and then you'd shoot a pilot and then hope it got picked up. In those days, I'd say after about 1 or 2 seasons, I started to get some momentum, and I would say there was about 3 or 4 or 5 years in a row where I shot a pilot. I don't think any of them went. Maybe one went. But I had some years where I was lucky in pilot getting. And part of it was that I think I always remember feeling like I walked in a room and they were like, oh, you're from New York. And there was a little bit of because you could go on tape in New York in those days, but really everything was really LA. And now it's in your own bedroom, so who knows? But so I remember feeling like I was kind of like a bit of a new face from New York. I was out of school and I was bringing an energy that might have been a little bit of fresh for some casting directors, and I think that sort of helped charge me into some luck of getting a pilot a year for a bunch of years there.
Now, a lot of times people get depressed when a pilot doesn't get picked up. And I always say, well, you got a pilot. That means you're that much better than the other people. It's not your doing. It's the network doing, or the writers. Oh, yeah. It's not. Would you get bummed out? Would you have those visions in your head when you got that pilot going, shit, man, if this goes for 3 years?
That's the whole game as an actor. It's like expectation and fantasy and desire and keeping it real. It's so many of those decisions, those things that will allow you real financial success, or anything, any way in which your career can really take off. So often that's just out of your hands. So yeah, you gotta. I was very vulnerable to that early on. I got a pilot, it's going to go. And then enough stuff happened where, reality set in. I got a pilot, didn't go. Got a pilot, didn't go. Got one that was supposed to go, and, we were told it was going to go, and, some crazy shit happened and it didn't go. So I've had more than enough experience training in, I expect nothing. And now I feel like that served me well. Because I just have a sort of a clear head about what to expect. I'm thrilled when it hits, and I don't expect it to. Again, being on something like House, you get a little spoiled because you're like, wow, 5 years and it's just a hit, and it's going to be on the air. That was the one time I remember when that was over. I was like. Everybody was kind of glad. It sort of needed the break, and sort of there was a sense of like, oh, okay, I'm glad that gig is up. But within about 6 months, I was like, oh my God, that will never happen again. That was lucky. That was really, really lucky.
Well, how'd you keep your head together when those pilots didn't get picked up? It really shows resilience. I know you love the craft, but there's got to be I mean, even though you got cast, there has to be self-doubt. You're like, am I like bad luck schlep rock? Like, what's going on
No.
here? I mean, how did you keep yourself just focused? Because that's the thing. People don't understand. I talk to a lot of people in the business world, and I say, listen, you guys don't know where rejection is. I said, you sit down and talk to an actor. I said, they can have a hit show, and then they can go and see 4 other people who have a hit show for a guest star spot. I said, so you guys don't bitch if you got turned down for a sales, thing, because actors go through rejection every day. But at that younger age, when you're so close to the horseshoe, man, how did you stay focused? Just because of your love of the craft?
Yeah, it never occurred to me that I was going to do anything else. So, and you just got to be born with a tough skin. You got to have whatever that thing is that allows you to just take a beating. And I know a lot of friends, a lot of actors who just said, nope, that's just, it's too much rejection. Like, you can't do that. And, it's not, is it self-flagellation? Is it torture? Sometimes it really feels that way. And sometimes even now, moments I'm like, you know what? It's just, there's nothing sexy about it anymore. The business has changed. I don't, I'm moving on in years. I want to have control of what I do. And yet here I am still, here's my face, I'm putting it out there. Oh, I got cast. Great. Oh, the show's not going to happen. It's just out of my control. And I did, it took me some time to learn that. And I just think for some reason, it's just my relentless desire to do it. And that I won't, I'll take no for an answer. You take no for an answer every day, but I won't, in the big picture, ever take no. This is what I love to do, and I've been fortunate enough to do it. And so that alone will keep me going, just because I know it's there. I know I can. So if these times are slower, I do rely on that. When I was young, which really is your question, how do you get back up? I don't know. You're just stupid. I think you are just young and stupid, and that was it. I loved it, and I didn't see anything else. I mean, if you're a creative type in a way, or don't be creative. You just know what you want to do, and it's what you have to do. You'll take a hell of a lot of punishment.
Now, when did you start hitting your stride as you feel as an actor? When did you start hitting that stride where you felt a confidence, where you started getting, you got a regular gig or this? When did you feel like you're like, okay, you know what? I'm mastering this well. I know what I'm doing.
I remember pretty clearly, like I keep referring to this 61 movie. I was young and I was learning on that film in a way. And then it was about a year later that I got a gig, a miniseries called The Lost Room for what was in the Sci-Fi Channel. And it was shooting in New Mexico, and it was a great show and a great part. It was with Peter Krause and Juliana Margulies, and a very young Elle Fanning, one of the Fanning girls, sisters, and she was tiny. And this was a really, really interesting, cool show. Kevin Pollak was in it, and I don't know, something about the character clicked, the writing clicked, and I spent about 2 months in Albuquerque just feeling relaxed, and I could feel that the character made sense, and I remember just thinking, oh, this isn't stressful. This is really, really fun, and I'm feeling a confidence I hadn't felt before. I went right from that into The Starter Wife, which was this miniseries that shot in Australia with Deborah Messing, and that was another 3 months right on that, where I was just almost every day. And then I went right from that into House for 5 years. So there was a span of about 7 years in the middle there where it really had to do with the fact that I just, I had 3 gigs back to back to back with really, really interesting roles, well written. And somewhere by the time I was in my first season of House, I look back, I was like, wow, the last 2 or 3 years were so key in getting me comfortable enough to be on House. And then it was just, again, like I said before, just this sort of every day. And before I didn't even think about, I've hit my stride. I just knew that I knew what I was doing. I was like, I know how to do this now. I really do. But it took me some time.
Why do you say it was a point where you felt you were comfortable enough to be on House?
That's a good question. I mean, part of it was just sort of me, coming onto a show that was already a big hit, and it was stressful because I was afraid I wasn't going to, I was going to get fired, and that was part of how they built in the whole entrance to the show, was this sort of reality show where they were firing the new people one by one. And I made it, but there was a lot of stress, and it was just a big show. I was like, it was a monster hit. At one point, it was the biggest, most watched show on the planet, and there was this part of me that was just like, whoa, am I game for this? Am I up to be on a big hit like this? And will people want to watch me in this world? And even though I had those few years of learning how to relax on set and know what I was doing, House felt more, the stakes were higher. And when I made it as a regular and realized that I was just part of this family and show, and I'm old enough and talented enough and skilled enough that, after about 1 or 2 seasons on House, I was like, yeah, if I can do this and be with these people and be in a network show, what's the problem here, Jacobson? You can do anything.
What was your process for getting the role for House? Was it audition? Was it offer? Or what happened?
No. It was an audition. It was for they were looking for House's new team, and it was billed for us as an 8-episode arc with an option to become a series regular. So I just went in on tape like you do for any of them, and then they called me in to meet the producers, and I knew one of the producers, Katie Jacobs. I think she probably called me in the first place, and she was friends of a friend, and I worked for her on another show before, so I had that connection. And again, I sort of went into the callback, and it felt fun and funny. And again, I was in a room. I remember making them laugh about something that had nothing to do with House, and I remember thinking we were just enjoying each other, and the role felt really, really spot on for me. But yeah, I got the offer, but then I didn't know if I was going to make it as a regular, and I spent the next 8 episodes fighting it out. There were 5 of us who knew we would be the final 5. That was the part I was auditioning for. And when it came down to that, literally every week, every episode, you didn't really know before the script came, if you were going to make it. And but it was actually really fun. It was such a stressful situation, but Cal Penn and Olivia Wilde and Eddie Gathegi and Annie Dudek and I were the final 5. We sort of loved the terror of it, and it made us closer. And it turned out to be a really fun experience, but really weird, because it was like I'm in this reality show every week. I mean, that doesn't happen in my business. It was strange.
Now you've been acting for a long time, and when you're on House and you're a series regular, do you sleep easier at night when you know that after the season's over, you read the trades, House is coming back for another season, and you're going, okay, I don't have to audition, I got that. I mean, what's that? What is that, a security feeling, or what is it like as an actor? Just because you bust your ass, you're used to ups and downs, pilots. I mean, it must just change your whole health and physical being.
Yeah, I entered the show. We were burst onto the show in the context of being fired at any moment, and it was possible. You never really know, because there are decisions that are out of your hands, and creatively and economically that. So I never felt 1,000% sure. But by the second season, it becomes like family, and I knew the writers and the creators and the actors, and it was clear that the show was not going anywhere. So yes, in that rare moment, suddenly it's like, yeah, I'm coming back again, and I'm not waiting to see what the network says. I'm not waiting to make sure that my options have been picked up. This is my family. This is my show, and it is the best feeling you can have in the business, because it's good money, and it's good writing. And it's a lovely set. It's a lovely group of people. So to be able to do that every day for 5 years is like, I know the odds of that happening again. And I mean, I've had some other wonderful shows. I did a show called Colony after that, where I was a series regular, and that was 3 seasons. I think they aborted that show unceremoniously and inappropriately. But those were 3 wonderful seasons again, where, I mean, that was a bit of a struggle. Are we going to make it ratings wise? But in terms of the writing and the people, it was, again, sort of a family. Those moments, they're few and far between. House was by far the best, just because it was a monster hit. And, knowing that you're coming back is very rare and wonderful.
What's it like working with Hugh Laurie? I always still, it still amazes me that guy has an English accent. He's one of those people that you sit there and you go, even when he was on like Veep, he's, and then you see him in an interview and you go, holy shit, I forgot that guy is English. On set, is he always speaking English?
Yeah, I would forget. I guess his thing was once he arrived onto the lot, he was in his American accent. So I only whenever we were out off the set, or when he would go into the trailer and get his hair and makeup off, cleaning his face afterwards, then he would have his accent. So we'd finish a whole day, and then I'd be in the trailer with him sometimes afterwards, and he had his accent, his English accent, and I always was like, "Whoa, I forgot." Because his accent, his American accent was so real, and that was the bulk of our time together. So whenever I did see him otherwise in his normal accent, it was always a little bit jarring. But he's amazing. He's, he had a lot on his shoulders and he carried it. And, it was just a monster hit, and the character is iconic and fantastic. And he's one of those super talented people. It's just sort of endless. It's, funny and sweet, and he's a great guy.
You're probably one of the only actors that we can say actually worked with Hugh Laurie and Method in Red. Now, what was that show?
Yeah, that was great. That was just nuts. That was that was Method Man and Red Man, and they would just never make that show today for many reasons. But it was this, this black family, or these guys, this black family that was moving into a very haughty white New Jersey, community, and that was it. And it was funny, and they were who they were, and I was the nebbishy neighbor who was impressed and terrified by these scary stoners. And again, I don't think they could make that show today, but it was really quite fun. It was just crazy because they're just out there. I mean, they run by their own rules, and those rules didn't always sync up with network rules. And there was some off-site pot smoking, which was pretty exciting. And they were just, really sweet guys. It was just crazy. It was just an energy, and it was just sort of felt a little bit more Wild West than usual to me.
Well, earlier you said you were sort of ready for when House ended. You said, you were ready were you ready just to move on, or were you just ready to change something in your career?
Well, I was living in New York when I was shooting House, so I was the only one in the cast who was not from Los Angeles, and then that was not settled in L.A. So I was doing a lot of commuting back and forth to see my family. It was physically exhausting in a way that by season 5, I was like, all right, that part I'll be glad to be done with. It felt like, I think they could have gone on. Certainly, I would have enjoyed playing the part more. But there was also something it felt like there was a lot of tension between the network and the studio, and we kind of knew that things were winding down. And so there was a part of me that just felt like, okay, if this is going to be done, I'm really okay with that. I won't have to commute now back and forth. And I played Taub for 5 years. You just don't get to do that as an actor anywhere. So I certainly felt like I was way into the bonus area with that character. So I didn't need I want to explore much more. If they had given me another 2 or 3 seasons, I loved how they wrote for me, I would have enjoyed it, but I felt sated. So in that regard, I was like, yeah, I think I can be done and look for something else. I've got some money in the bank. But then, as I said, 6 months later, I'm like, what? Why did I want the show back? Where's the money? Where's the people? Where's the camera?
Does having a hit show, when you walk off that, does it change your perception in town? Because, you did Ray Donovan, you did The Americans, all great shows. Did you feel that once you're on a hit show and a critically acclaimed show, it's not like you're on some hit bullshit show where there's a juggling clown and a kid playing the banjo.
Right.
That's not going to work. But how did it change you in the casting room? Did people perceive you different, or did you start getting offers? Like Ray Donovan, was that an offer, or did you have to audition?
No. Ray Donovan was an audition. You always think, I had a thought, now that I've been on the show, it'll be easy. You have that thought. I have that thought every 5 years, and then I smack myself in the face and go, don't think that, you can't rely on that. I think if anything, yes, it was great to have been on the show, and I think that put me to another level of like, okay, this guy has been on a network hit, and more people knew me, and so I was just sort of able to get in on more things. The offers didn't come flying. I was still auditioning. But the thing that was that also happened was that because so many people saw me in house, the way this business works, they were like, oh, well, he's sort of a straight-laced guy, a doctor, That persona, that character, that energy was what people saw me as. And I'm, I love to do comedy, and I want to do all different sorts of roles. And it's easy. The last thing you did is the last thing people remember. And if it's a big hit, then they really remember that. And but that has for some people that can be really problematic. If it's like you become this sort of iconic character, it's hard to break it. I mean, I was a supporting role on House, but still, I remember feeling like people were only thinking of me as a guy in a lab coat. And eventually now I've, gone on to different kinds of characters. But I would love to get to the point when it's literally just offers. I don't know that will happen. We'll see. Ray Donovan was an audition, but it came right on the heels of House, so I felt like I had some momentum there, and that probably helped me in the room. I also knew Liev from long ago, and we had a good energy. The Americans, I got offered because my best friend is the creator. So a little bit of a thing. He's the best man at my wedding. And, I was pissed that I wasn't in it from the beginning.
Yeah. Well, Ray Donovan, what was it like going from a network show to a cable show where basically you can say whatever you want, you can do whatever you want, notes, censors. What is that like for an actor when you go, I can just, if I go off script or I improv or whatever, and it works, they're not going to say, you said fuck. It can't be in there. What is that like? Does that give you an actor a little bit of a creative freedom?
Well, I think that the energy of the show just had that cable energy for sure. It's a nasty, dark, violent, expletive-filled show. My character was, one of those people. He was just sort of a, real asshole and a nasty, shitty guy who just, was swearing all the time. So, so you feel the energy that it's more sort of expansive and it's a little wilder. At the same time, depending on who the writers are, the House writers were like, we like it to be word for word. But the Ray Donovan people were pretty much the same. So it's not like you go in there and say, well, now that I'm on cable, I can just go off, and nobody's going to get angry at you if you improv something in the moment. But if you're an actor who continually can't stay to the script, it's not being on cable it's not a permission slip to just go off. I mean, they gave me more than enough nasty shit to say on the page. So I always felt like, the writers knew what they wanted me to say, but but ultimately it is a bit of a more open feeling to know that everybody's a little bit more human on cable.
Now you also did NCIS Los Angeles. What's that like going into a show that everything's set? It's a hit. The people have been there for a while, so there's none of that. Well, we might get canceled. It's like, okay, even like the gaffer. I've been here forever. I got my pension coming from this.
Yeah.
As an actor, do you walk in? Do you feel a little like an outsider at first because you're coming on, or do you walk in and you go, okay, everyone, there's no tension, no prove yourself, because if you screw up and the show sucks, you might get us canceled.
Yeah, there's no. I mean, really, am I in a position to feel in personal responsibility for a show? Because I'm not the number one on the call sheet guy. I'm usually the supporting guy. I'm not saying I don't want to be the number one guy, and I'd love to tank a show myself, but I don't usually walk on with that kind of pressure. Certainly, you go on something like NCIS, like House or the Law and Orders. These are well-oiled machines, but NCIS, my God, they have it down. It is a chill place to work. It's lovely. It's really nice to feel that sweet energy and that lack of anxiety around, sometimes it moves a little too quickly because you want to make sure you get it right. And sometimes they're like, we don't give it, it's NCIS. Come on, this is not your acting moment. You'll move on. It's a very specific formula. It's always weird to come on to any new show when you don't create it because you're just the new guy. And that's and you are fighting. You know, for me on NCIS, I was fighting to impress them and make them want to fulfill my contract of this many episodes. And hopefully I had an option to do more, and you always want to impress. So that has a tension of its own. When you're with Colony, which I did after, that's one of those few times when I got to create it from the beginning and I was part of that original core, there is a different feeling of this is my show. I don't feel responsible if it doesn't go, but there is, I'm not trying to work my way in and get happy with everybody.
When
NCIS,
when Colony got canceled, were you sad because you were there from the beginning? It's one of those things like when you come in the middle and it's like, okay, it's not your baby, and even though you started from, okay, are we going to get picked up from season 1 to 2?
Yeah.
When that ends. Is that a big letdown? And as you said earlier, you thought it could have gone longer.
Yeah, I think in that situation, it does feel worse when it's because you're right. It does feel like your baby. You did sweat it out together with the actors just to make something from the ground up and hopefully get picked up. And you did get picked up, and you got a second season, and you got a third season. And we moved to Vancouver. There's challenges along the way, but you're in something that you've really created from the beginning. And so when it doesn't go, that hurt, but it also hurt because it was just a particularly wonderful character I love playing, and it was a great, again, like I've been lucky to be on sets where the people are so wonderful, and Ryan Condal, who is the showrunner for House of the Dragon, so it's like, boom, there's a talented guy, and it was great. I mean, he was actually kind of new to writing by the time when he started that show with Carlton Hughes, but together they were just a wonderful pair of writers to work for. They really created a character that I loved. So I just loved the character so much. And so letting that go was really, really hard because I felt there was obviously a lot more story to tell because they just basically cut it off. And I was really, really curious to see where they would have taken my character.
Now tell me about Fear of the Walking Dead. Does that shoot in Austin?
It did. I'm not doing it anymore. I believe, I don't know if they're on their last season or not, but they moved to Savannah. But yeah, I was on and off that show for like 3 seasons or 4 seasons, and my whole time was in Austin, which is great. I love being in Austin. I'd never been to Texas, and I had my hottest, like it's so hot there. You just we were shooting in July. It was like, holy shit, I cannot believe how hot this is. It's inhuman. But that was, and we were shooting out you don't shoot in the city. It's out, and we would sometimes travel an hour or so outside the city into Texas, deep into Texas, and and it wasn't like we were climbing mountain peaks, but it was rough by my standards. I liked that. I thought that was really fun. Shooting out in the wild. I love it.
Now you're doing a Hallmark movie.
Right.
Now you're shooting in Utah?
Yeah, that shoots in Utah.
Now, what is Hallmark? I mean, I know John Capolosa told me, he does the Hallmark series. He says it's a little bit different. Dave Thomas actually wrote, I was talking to him, he wrote a movie and then they changed it completely. What's it like? Because as an actor, you go in and my wife loves Hallmark movies. I swear to God, she tapes every Christmas show.
It's a thing.
Gregory Harrison's been on the show a few times. Whenever Gregory's on, she's like, honey, Gregory's on the show. And there's such a following. What's it like shooting that? Because you know the outcome. It's like the thing. So it's not like you have to get really intense. I mean, you're an actor, so you're going to bring it. But is it sort of like a little bit of a vacation where you're like, you know what? I'm not going to get roughed up here. I'm not getting chased by anyone. I'm not going to get anyone to hit me. I mean, what's it like for an actor? Is it something it's something that's like, oh, this is great. I'm plying my craft, but it's not exhausting me.
Well, I like being exhausted. I like being chased and stunts, and the rougher the better for me. So this is definitely more staid experience. I mean, I'm often behind a desk anyway in my roles, so it's not like I'm some cowboy. But you're right. It's a thing, and there's a formula, and you're plugged into a formula. But I've done that. House is in some ways the same thing. I mean, it was a episodic a network show that had a case a week and it gets solved. And, there's certain things that, NCIS that, I was plugged into a formula that, the parameters are a little bit, it's more limited. So it's not something that I look down on because of that. It's part of some of the projects you do. You do those projects, you get the ones that feel a little bit more wild. This is definitely a more staid, project than Fear the Walking Dead. But to me, it comes down to the people and the character. And I'm playing a fun guy, and the people are lovely. And I'm working with people who like to play. And it's a very sweet group. It's fast, and it's not my world really. But I'm an actor, so can I plug myself into that world and make it feel real? And some of it feels a little squeamish because it's really not my world, but you're making that's what I'm getting paid to do this. It's, I'm not a snob about it. It's like they've cast me. I'm lucky to get cast. I'm grateful. I'm making money, and it's my job to play this character and help build a product that your wife is going to like and that tons of people are going to like. So I'm very happy to be a part of it.
Now, you mentioned earlier the play you were doing was going to go to New York, and it was scrapped because of COVID. Were you doing a lot of theater? Have you been doing theater throughout this time, or have you been really concentrating on acting on TV and movies, not theater?
I only did theater when I got out of Juilliard for a long time, and then I stopped. Unfortunately, I was working a lot in TV and film, and I had not. This was a series of one acts that Ethan Coen, the Coen brothers. He wrote them, and we did them in the Mark Taper Forum in Los Angeles. I hadn't done a play in, I think, 15 years. So, it was I knew the director, and he asked me to do it, and I was a little bit nervous because it's a very different muscle. Remembering being out there in front of a live audience, it's more exhausting. But I remembered how much I loved it because that's how I came up, and the camaraderie is different. There's that because you're out there every night, putting it out there, and you could fuck up at any moment, and you got to be there and show up. There's a certain tightness to the group in theater that I missed, and I would love to go back to that. I have not done that. We were going to mount those plays in New York, and that's when COVID hit. So I was going to repeat that show in New York, and I was sorry because I really, really loved doing it. I loved the immediacy and the feedback from the audience. I really missed it, but that's all I did for the first 10 years of my career. I would love to do it. I auditioned for a play, the new Tom Stoppard play that's going to be opening in about a month on Broadway. And I had an audition for a play in even longer, and I just did that a few months ago. I didn't get the part, but just even going in for the audition, this was a live experience, was, working with the director, and it's different, and it's great, and I miss it. And it's my core really as an actor. So I'd love to do another play.
Well, besides the Disney Plus show that we can't talk about, what's on your docket coming up? I mean, as you said, you're probably going to try to audition for more theater?
I will if it comes by. I was looking at another play recently, but that one didn't work out schedule-wise. I am open to whatever comes next. There is nothing else on the docket yet. This stuff will, the Hallmark will come out, the Disney series will come out, and I'm, taping myself in the other room looking for the next one. I just had a couple really good auditions for projects that, sometimes you read a script and you're like, oh, I want this one really bad. And I put myself on tape and did all the networking, and I know that guy can make sure you look at my tape stuff, and we'll see. I mean, chances are monumentally huge that I won't get it just because those are the numbers you're always playing. But we'll see what happens next.
One final question. During your long career, you worked a lot. Has there anyone you've worked on set with that you were just completely in awe of? Like, holy crap, I am working with such and such. I've had a bunch of those. Just like I got to work with Jack Nicholson for a few days, and as good as it gets, and De Niro and Robert Duvall. I mean, these are like
guys from another generation, they built American cinema in a way. And I mean, just what do you say? It's like, you feel like a pipsqueak and a wannabe, but it was just thrilling. Yeah, you've got to put the awe aside and do your work. And we're all actors, but their personalities matter. It's like Nicholson was like, just you felt like you were chatting with your uncle, and he was open about his family and life. And we were in this situation where we wound up a very long scene that they took days to shoot, and so I got to sort of sit and there was a lot of waiting around, and there was a lot of just sitting around chit chatting with him, and he's so open and lovely, and that was just like, oh my God. De Niro was shyer, but I was still, oh my God, because it's fucking De Niro. And Robert Duvall, I played his associate in this movie, A Civil Action, with John Travolta. That's a great movie, and I was playing a lawyer, shockingly, and Duvall was the big attorney in the film. And I was just sort of his guy, kind of there all the time. So I didn't have a lot to do as an actor, but I just sat next to him for like 6 weeks, and he's my favorite. I don't think there's anybody better than Duvall, and so that was awe and trying not to pee my pants, and it's great. But at the same time, you're like, what am I going to do? I'm going to sit here and fucking be impressed for 6 weeks, or am I going to act? I'm going to try to be as normal as I can because I'm here because I belong here. He's not. What? He's just looking to play the scene, and right. So you got to remember why you're there. But yeah, I've been lucky. I've had some heavy hitters that I got to hang out with for a bit.
Well, I want to thank you, Peter, for coming on. It was great to talk to you. As I said, I've seen your work, and you're always good. I mean, we didn't even get to WeCrashed, but man, just that was. Yeah, it was. I don't want to go to it, but no. Tell me about WeCrashed before we go, because I just you're playing a real life scumbag, so it must be weird when you sit there and do you do research and like look him up or
hard. I do as much research as I ever can. It's always fun to play a real life person. I've always played scumbag, so I'm kind of used to it and I like it. It's a compliment in some way to me. There's not a lot of information on this guy. In fact, there are only 2 photographs that I could find. I thought he was a lovely, to me, I'm not thinking, I'm playing the scumbag. I'm playing, a guy, you look for what's real. I mean, he's a human being. He's a father, and he had an immense amount of pain in his life. And he got into the trouble he got into because, like all of us, he probably did what he thought was the best thing for him to do. And his moral compass was off, and I can relate to that. We all can. And I thought he was a well-written character and sort of sympathetic and sort of a quieter tone in what was otherwise a very sort of frenetic piece. And I liked playing that. And it was exciting to, play Anne Hathaway's dad. I felt a little bit, I was like, I'm not really old enough to be. He had to grade me down. I was like, wow, I'm really getting up there. And Jared Leto, he was, he's a character and he's in character. And talk about improv, like he just goes. And I have also done a lot of improv, and, so when somebody throws me anything, I love being in that space and just throwing it back. And there was that scene of the 2 of us at the bar in the wedding. We had a lot of takes where it like almost came to blows. I mean, not anything serious, but like it got real heated because we were just off and running. And so that was exciting. Good, talented actors, and it was fun. It's fun. I mean, it's a crazy show. It's a crazy show.
Crazy.
Well, I feel like you had a very strong reaction to it.
Yeah, because you see it, man. I want to thank you again. Now you're on Twitter, right? I found you on Twitter. You're at Peter Jacobson on Twitter.
Oh my God, this will tell you. I'm just not. I'm not so active. It's the real Peter Jacobson.
So people go follow him on Twitter. Go to IMDb, look up his work, go watch his work because he's excellent. And go to my Twitter, I'm at Cooper Talk. Go to my website, coopertalk.net. You can find over 925 episodes on there. Email me, Cooper at coopertalk.net. Instagram, I'm at CooperTalk1. Remember, I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guests. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I'll talk to you guys next time.